OCO, and welcome to the Cherokee Phoenix Breakdown. I am Tyler Thomas, the executive editor of the Cherokee Phoenix, and I am honored to be joined today by Cherokee Nation Deputy Chief Bryan Warner, as well as Stilwell Public Schools Assistant Superintendent Matthew Brunk. Our show today addresses the digital divide in Indian country, and particularly in the Cherokee Nation, and the tribe's strategies to address it and how those strategies are benefiting community partners. Deputy Chief, Mr. Brunk, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thank you, Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you. The term digital divide has become an important issue in the United States, especially in Indian country. However, the COVID-19 pandemic and its effect of distance learning for many students in the 2020-21 school year has magnified the issue. Deputy Chief, can you give the audience a synopsis of what the term digital divide means when they read it in news?
Okay. Well, and really for me, it's pretty simple. Just paring it down to something when you have gaps in service somewhere. And when we talk about the digital divide, we're talking about one of the number one things that is a impediment to a Native American student to getting the proper education. It's basically just not having areas where there's just no connectivity and being able to get those services to them. And I think when you really take a look at it, affordable, reliable broadband, it tends to be an issue a lot in our rural areas. And when you look at our rural areas, that's where our Cherokee communities are and so forth. And what we've really been focused on is trying to bring something that can connect access to those citizens, but also, these places, the infrastructure just doesn't really exist. And we want to get to a point where it's, you start looking at it's quality versus affordability on a lot of these things. So economics plays a part in this. But what we want to do at the Cherokee Nation is to, shorten that gap, shrink that digital divide down to, I love it, to be nothing and afford those opportunities to those students, but in an affordable way that it's accepted too by those populations. So, and that there's a many prong approach and a process to getting this done, but Cherokee Nation is always willing to jump in there and get after it. So,
Mr. Brunk, in your education experience, how's that digital divide impacted schools like Stilwell and others in rural northeastern Oklahoma?
Well, I'll just start out by talking about how it's impacted me. When I moved back to Stilwell, I live 1.5 miles out of town, and it took me a year to get internet. So
Wow.
we're like, and I think what Deputy Chief Warner said, like quality, right? Like I was willing to pay, but I couldn't get the quality, right? And so it took a year for me to get internet. And I'll tell another story. During the cold spell that we had, my son was doing virtual learning, and he had done the Zoom with his teacher. He had finished his homework, and I came in and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I thought he'd be looking at ESPN or something like that. He's really into March Madness and sports in general. And he said, I'm playing a game." And I said, "What kind of game?" And it was an educational game that his teacher had sent to him through a platform they were using. So he sat on there and played that game for hours. I know that sounds like a terrible bad. It was really cold. But I was like, it's educational, and he's playing it and he loves it. And so when I think about that on the educational side, I think about like we at school, we're able to offer a quality education. But I think sometimes our students miss out on the enrichment opportunities like that are available through those types of platforms. When you go at home and you have a Chromebook, you have a hotspot, you have internet, you're able to take it to the next level through those enrichment activities. So I think providing equity and access to technology is so important. And like Mr. Warner said, a lot of our students are spread out in very rural areas, and I think that infrastructure is hard to provide and it takes time. But I see Cherokee Nation really pushing that, and I think it's benefit our students because there is a gap and it does make a difference. We may be able to provide an awesome education 8 hours a day, But those enrichment opportunities, those supplemental activities that are available through access to technology and internet are so important. So it just makes a difference, and we want our students to be on the same level playing field as students in Tulsa or students in Owasso or different places in the state. And I think it's very important to have that access. So which is getting better and better for sure. So it's a big issue in rural northeastern Oklahoma. So
Deputy Chief, we've touched on some of the factors that cause this digital divide, whether it be location or resources or funding, whatever it may be. How's the Cherokee Nation working to address those and close the gap for its citizens in the reservation?
Yes, sir. Well, when you take a look at it initially, like I said earlier, it becomes an issue of economics, because you look at the providers that do provide whether it be a wireless service or fiber to the home and stuff like this. That when you look at rural America, that you've got scattered homes all across our little countryside that we all love here, and we like our space, man. We like all that, being able to stretch our legs and and have a neighbor over here that's got a hay field and stuff. But if you look at the urban area and you're a provider, you've got people jammed up, packed up into places. Well, that's more money, that they start looking at that ROI, that return on investment. And I think that's one of the major causes of the digital divide, and having that gap is as a business model, you've got to have a pretty good ROI. If I'm going to invest in this community, what type of return am I going to get? So those densely populated areas, they tend to get that better service and so forth. So that's one of the things. But another thing is adaptability. It's and affordability. So if we're no matter how high tech we get, if people can't afford it, they won't bring it into the home and adapt it over time. And you tend to see you take a look, very happy that Cherokee Nation in this area provides a minimum wage of $11, and moving up. And we always hope to get our workforce out here a good, healthy paycheck for that family unit. I think that's some of the things, jobs in rural America. A lot of people that I know make a living off cutting wood in the wintertime, you know what I mean? And then baling hay in the summertime. And those are good jobs. But when you talk about what is something that we have to look at, is this a essential utility, more or less? When I start looking at internet service and fiber, it is a very essential. It's the electric of today's time and what we have to have. But I feel like here for the Cherokee Nation part in this is we have a lot of rural electric cooperatives that have done some groundwork and are doing some legwork in this area, and we've been great partners over time with these groups. So we're jumping in there, to mention a few, like Lake Region, Cooks and Hills is doing a feasibility study right now. Ozark, you've got all of these different groups, and I think it's for me, I appreciate the people that forge these partnerships over time, because that allows us to leverage both of our capabilities to serve that third prong, which is that Cherokee citizen or that non-native citizen that's out there. Because quite frankly, the digital divide doesn't just affect Cherokees, it affects everybody in that area. But I can tell you from our part too, we were awarded a little small grant to do a feasibility study. And I think that's important, that we take a strategic look at what's already going on right here. Where are the gaps in those services? How can we help fill those out? But also take that meaningful approach to what we're doing, because it's going to be something that's going to be good for the long haul. It's not something we can snap our fingers and get it done in an instant. But I think with everybody starting to really look at that, and with the new administration in DC, there's new efforts all across. Not to jump into anything earlier, but you're looking at that pandemic and what it's brought about to us. And for me, one of my degrees has been is in education. It's in distance learning in particular, and that was always one of the things that we talked about early on, was how do we get more people connected in a way? Because when I told my students, the internet is now like a tool. It's like a hammer. It's like a saw. It's whatever, we had to memorize all these charts. If I'm going to go out and look at water flow and density and start making these measurements, I could take all these measurements, I could pull these charts up today and just be that much more efficient. And as Mr. Brunk said, we provide great education in our public schools. I just want to be able to provide the opportunity that our students get used to using that tool in a very meaningful way. And there's so many things. And, when you can look at the internet and all that as a tool, but also there's the other side of that. And I think there's a big education piece on there of the dangers and the different things that you can get into the internet. But all in all, I think when used properly, it's a great way to help our kids take that next step forward. There's so many groups around, like the American Indian Resource Center, who's they have spatial learning labs, and so we have a lot of people wanting to do the same thing. We just all need to leverage our talents, pull these things up together, because I think that sum total of those collected efforts will be a great thing for this broadband and this expansion.
Deb, the tribe received more than $410 million through the CARES Act in 2020. The tribe has not only used those funds to meet the immediate healthcare needs of the pandemic, but they've also leveraged its funds to address needs that have a long-term impact, and that includes mitigating that digital divide. What are the ways the Cherokee Nation has used those CARES Act funds to address the digital divide, and what are the goals of those efforts?
Okay, well, I mean, obviously, right off the bat, you start thinking of students, you start thinking of working virtual school from home. How do I get those kids connected that don't have those there? My immediate thoughts, because I'm from Salisaw, I start thinking about Nycut, Bellefonte, Bell, some of these communities that are close around, but we have them all throughout the Cherokee Nation, Kenwood, Wickliffe, just to name a few of those areas. And, what we wanted to do initially, we started working with AT&T. We looked at other providers and things, the wireless providers, but we worked what AT&T had been doing, provided us the best step forward to cover a mass of folks. We looked at coverage areas and all this. We understand there's some tough areas, and we're looking at those as well. How can I tweak that one little bit? But we instituted mobile hotspots, and what we wanted to do, we wanted to complement what the state is doing. And just from looking at, I was amazed that they had distributed over 50,000 mobile hotspots throughout the state. But about 7,000 of those landed at schools throughout our reservation here at the Cherokee Nation. So we have roughly about 30,000 kids in 108 school districts throughout our reservation. So we wanted to make sure that we wanted to do more. And I can add this: to date, we have distributed nearly 11,000 mobile hotspots to Cherokee households and to the school districts for distribution. So I think that's huge in what we're doing, but that's not enough. We thought, well, hey, I'm thinking about Chewy, I'm thinking about over in Bryan and other places throughout this. How can we have some drive-up locations? Because you think about McDonald's, that's one of the great places there in Salisaw. You get off the interstate, a lot of people are sitting out there pulling down the internet right there, their Wi-Fi. And so we took that idea and created we had a great team: Travis Nolan, Todd Gord, Todd Enlow, several folks, to name a few, that were on the ground floor of taking a look at some areas that we could create. And one of those being in Chewy, which is basically a drive-up mobile hotspot area. You got a little sign there. It's all you've got some solar to run that on one side of it. But I think these are, it's not going to be the greatest thing. It's not the end all fix, but that is a spot now where somebody can come up and, and I've talked about students here, but what about the elders and their healthcare and being able to connect? And, so these are some short-term goals that we have met. The bigger long-term goal is, what is that feasibility study going to do? And I know for me, I would love to run fiber to these homes, but there are going to be some areas that's just not going to be possible. So we're looking at satellite technology. We're studying, what are other wireless capabilities that we can do to get everybody plugged in, get them linked up, if you will. And here's the thing: everybody's sitting at home, and there's there'd been you're not getting to communicate with your neighbors as much. You're not getting to do these things. And you talk to kids, they probably game a little too much. But I was a gamer when I was a kiddo, whether it be Atari or anything like that. Excuse me. But today's time, man, my kids, I added that to what they were doing at home because it allowed them, they had their headsets on, and my middle son, he's talking to 3 or 4 of his buddies, and and I think we limited that time down, but it was a good break for those kids to be able to visit with their friends. And here's the thing, here at the Cherokee Nation, this connecting everybody has brought us to an area where people are looking to see what we're doing. There's one group in particular, Delaware Resource Group. They are a aerospace engineering group, and they want to connect Cherokee students to a career path in software engineering, or business administration, different things like that fit in. They want to help make Oklahoma a mecca for that aerospace and defense industry. Well, that gaming is a key component because that's where those kids get that first taste of what it is. And once they figure out what is software engineering, what can I do, and what is a simulator? Hey, you got to have a technician to work on that. Hey, that technician makes $90,000 a year and he can live right there in Westville, Oklahoma. That is very important. That makes music to my ears because where I come from, if you can cut anywhere from, if you're making $11 on up, you're starting to be able to live a decent life around this area. And I want it better. I know I love for the opportunity for people to research and go out and do other things, but I love for them to be able to do those special talents that God give them right here in their hometown. That way they can plug back into their community. And, closing this digital divide and looking at what the pandemic has brought in, whether it be through telemedicine or whether it be through virtual education, stuff like that, that is why this is so important. And the small things that we've done by, adding to the mobile hotspots, adding drive-up connectivity spots, that's just the beginning of what we really want to do. But that is why that feasibility study is so crucial moving forward.
Mr. Brunk, you are the assistant superintendent at Stilwell, who has a predominantly Native American student enrollment. How has the tribe's use of its CARES Act dollars helped Stilwell during this COVID-19 pandemic bridge the technological gap for your students?
Having the support of the Cherokee Nation and being able to basically, they've provided for a lot of our basic technology needs. So when 80% of your students are Cherokee and they're receiving a grant through the Cherokee Nation or basically money to buy technology, wow, that takes that, and I don't even want to use the word pressure, but it helps us provide, I think, what, like I talked about earlier, enrichment opportunities for our students. Because when 80% of your students are getting maybe a Chromebook or some kind of device through the Cherokee Nation, then we're able to focus on our other 20%, making sure that digital divide is bridged. And then we're able to offer a lot of other things besides just basic technology needs, which can be virtual reality. We've incorporated that into our classrooms. And so we've also incorporated more computer science courses and coding courses. And so without the help from the Cherokee Nation, that wouldn't be possible for us because we would just be scrambling to provide the needs, just basic needs for our students. And so, and not just on the digital divide, but when Cherokee Nation provides just a plethora of PPE products and masks and all this stuff to our school, all these resources to our school, when we get our CARES fund and ESSER funds, we're able to just keep piling it on it and provide for our students. And so it just makes the educational situation for our students that much better when we have Cherokee Nation support. We always have, and that's evident. We're just every corner we take, everything that we want to do to improve our educational experience for our students, Cherokee Nation is right there leading. and we're there with them. We just love that support. So I mean, I could talk all day about that, but I think just the biggest thing is providing that technology. And I say grant, but I think it's a stipend for the students to buy technology, and that's just awesome. Because without these hotspots, without Chromebooks, different things, and I come back to the hotspot, uh, we were able to provide 500 hotspots for our students. And then that's just on top of what Cherokee Nation has provided. And so it's just been a great resource. I think about what Deputy Chief Warner mentioned about how our students are spread out in different communities. And that's awesome. We embrace that. That's an awesome part of our community. But we did visit a high school in California, and it made me think about the difference between our community and different communities around the nation. This high school was in the middle of their community, and basically everything just expanded from that school. So you had the whole population of the school just right there within blocks of that school. And to think how easy it is to get those resources, um, compared with what we have to deal with all our kids spread out. But I think with the Cherokee Nation's help, we're able to really bridge that gap. And just again, I come back to wow, it's been a very big help as an administrator, as an educator, as a parent, with 3 students in our school. It's just been a great privilege to work with Cherokee Nation. They've just been a great resource for us. So.
Deputy Chief, how important is it for the tribe to work with the community partners like public schools and Stilwell Public Schools to close the gap in its efforts in that regard?
Man, that is it's a great question, Tyler, and it's critical. That's the critical point of access to what's going on in a lot of households around the Cherokee Nation is being able to have that partnership, that close working relationship. And we all know here how important education has been to the Cherokee Nation throughout time, throughout history. When you look at a tribe that had a 90% literacy rate in their own language and in their own written language, that's impressive as itself. But that tells me a better story of how important it was to learn, to listen, to observe. That way you could extrapolate some sort of solution if there was an issue, or you knew how to react to something that might be good happening. So to me, that education, that's the key to our future. That's everything that we do, that's success. But those partnerships, when we talk about digital divide, I can't think about or I can't leave out transportation and food security, because those are the 3 major things that lead those obstacles. And we've worked through transportation issues. We're still always going to work through food security issues, with schools. But I've listened to educators in a lot of these schools, and it doesn't matter if it's in a big town or a small town or just a little community. Those educators, everybody wants a day off. Everybody likes the holidays, a spring break, fall break, Christmas break. Your educators, they start to get a little anxious during those times. And there's one reason why, is because they're connected to these kiddos so much, and they know who goes home and who doesn't have the proper amount of nutrition throughout that time. So that's why you see the backpack programs and everything that we do. And that tells me that these educators, they know their kiddos. So if we work with them, I think we're able to find those solutions. But that has to be the number one thing, though, is being able to listen to these educators. And I feel like Cherokee Nation has done that throughout time. Perhaps that as we continue to move forward, there's always ideas out there. And by us going out and having these engagements and putting on our annual TOS meetings, teachers of successful students, and then our other things that we do with superintendents and stuff, it just gives us a whole bunch of data, if you will, that we can crunch those numbers and try to figure out a way that we can strategically implement something that will foster education and foster learning in a meaningful way. And you want to start a trend in these families of, hey, we can do this. But that digital divide, that being connected, everybody's connected today. And I want my Cherokee kiddos to be connected. I want all of their neighbors and their friends to have that opportunity that somebody has down living in Frisco, Plano, Dallas metropolitan area, Fort Worth, in that area, because I feel like we have just as much to offer, if not more, by the way that we grew up and the way that we observe things, the way that we take a really slow, calm approach and try to keep that anxiety level down to as low as we can. And if we can provide these things, I think we'll be successful for a long time in the Cherokee Nation.
A couple more questions for each of you, and then we'll let you go. As we stated earlier, Matt, your school is predominantly Native American. How are you at Stilwell trying to get your kids better connected digitally? And what are the long-term benefits of reducing the digital divide and creating better digital access for the young people?
Well, I think connection is key. And like Mr. Warner said, connection not only with technology, but connection with a world that is going at a speed that we can hardly keep up with. That's moving towards that. We're already there, and so I think I had one Zoom before COVID. And now all of our teachers, I mean, that's second nature now. And for our students, that's second nature as well. And so it's so important. It's not going away. And if you can look at a silver lining, and that's even hard to say, but if you can look, it has prepared us for an outside world that's going to help us, I think, bridge that gap, bridge that digital divide, and really keep us on the same playing field as a lot of people in the world. And so it's so important to connect our students with technology, give them the training to be able to use it adequately. And then when you provide technology, provide them with those resources to really excel and go beyond where we would expect at my age. I don't consider myself old, but I used to be so, I think hip, that's an old word, right? Hip to technology, but now I'm so far behind and these students are way ahead of me. So I have to catch up. And so it's just so important to have those resources for our students and provide, I think, activities that relate to what they're into. And so we've started an esports program, and basically we have students go and compete in playing video games, something they're really, really interested in, because as Mr. Warner said, these are career fields, and we want to prepare our students for career fields in the future. And so we have to stay caught up with that. But we've done that, virtual reality. We've done a lot of cross collaboration in classes with technology. And so it's just so important for us to stay with our basically the technology and where it's going. So it's just really, really important. We have STEM classes now. Like I said, we have some coding classes, and Cherokee Nation has helped us with that. They've really promoted Native American youth to get into coding. And so they've provided some resources for that. So we've incorporated that into some of our curriculum. And so it's just so important. And we realize that, and it's exciting. And then it's also going to be a challenge. But we are excited to have that challenge, really provide those resources for our students.
Matt, I'm gonna ask you to take off your education administrator hat, and I want you to put on your parent hat.
Oh yeah,
I think you're parent of a sixth grader, right?
Yeah, I got a fourth grader. I got a kid I got Flynn. He's in 4-year-old program, so right before kindergarten. And then I have a 17-month-old. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, even in as a fourth grade, when I was in fourth grade, you were just thinking about recess. Now they got to be thinking already career-wise, 10 years down the road and stuff, college, everything.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what kind of tips do you have as a parent of young kids on how to, I guess, push them to utilize this technology, but also for an education or development and stuff like that? What kind of tips do you have for parents?
Well, and I think it comes back to the game my son was playing. We need to just provide those types of things, those enrichment opportunities for students, because sometimes our students and our kids, they don't realize they're doing something that's beneficial for them. I feel like if you told them it was really beneficial, they would just steer clear, right? But there's so many platforms out there. There's so many things out there that are actually entertaining, that are fun, that our students are into. And I think promoting that and letting them do that, um, and and being there to allow them to mess up, and I think that's a really really important thing in education. My son, he if he messes up, he's just down on himself. But I think that's part of learning, and I think that's kind of cheesy and cliche, but that's the biggest thing that you could, I think, promote is it's okay to mess up. It's okay not to know how to do something. That's what you have to do is learn. And a lot of us, and me included, I don't know a lot about technology, but this year has been very beneficial for me to learn. And being on the Zoom meetings, doing things with having Zoom meetings and professional development with teachers, I just think that's taken me out of my comfort zone. So for our students, for our kids, uh, pushing them out of their comfort zone is really important, because growing up in Stilwell, I didn't really know what was out there. I knew you could be a teacher because I was involved. I had a lot of relatives that were teachers, and I knew you could be an eye doctor because my dad's an eye doctor. So like there was just a few things I knew about. And so that's one of the things I really want to talk to my students about, and my personal kids, and just and talk to them about what's out there. There's other things out there, and give them that access to those careers even at an early age. And there's a lot of activities. We start an ICAP program, and it's individualized career academic plans. We start those in sixth grade. And so it's really, really important to start thinking about that. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on them or anything, but to start that conversation, it's definitely not going to hurt. So, yeah, I always tell my son, I'm like, hey, why don't you be a eye doctor or something like that? But I think he wants to be a firefighter right now, which is awesome. So,
You need them.
oh yeah.
Deputy Chief, we've talked a lot about bridging this divide and mitigating and the resources that the tribe's providing to communities and their efforts and strategies. Just in general, what does all this effort and strategies and work, what does it all mean for the Cherokee Nation in the future?
Oh, it's the key. It's the key ingredient to what we're looking. If we're making something that's going to help our folks be successful. I mean, everything that we've been doing and all these collaborations, and taking a good strategic look at federal CARES Act dollars, and how can we address an immediate need, but how can we also start some scaffolding for the future? It's one of the biggest things. And if we can help anyone understand what it's like to live in a rural area versus metropolitan areas, we Cherokees live all over. We have a lot of knowledge about different lays of the land and different states, and in particular here. And I think it's pretty outstanding how that we work. And I love listening to Mr. Brunk talk about his kiddos there. And it got me to thinking about mine. I've got a sophomore in high school. I've got a fourth grader, and I've got a kindergartner. And the time that we lost in this last year, and the start and the stop, and then leaving, spring break just never stopped last year. It's got educators and it's got folks at Cherokee Nation looking, what do we do this summer? How can we because we know we have the Rescue Act coming in, we have more dollars coming down. And I think that's our next step is really looking at everybody's going to be wanting to do somewhat of the same thing in that educational field, and how can we help walk through that field of study, and trying to get, because you look at supply chain issues, and my mind starts worrying, because when we looked at mobile hotspots, can we get these? Can we get the technology that we need. So it's very important. And also talking about the ICAP, it is important. And I think, getting these kids engaged early. When I was in school, I mean, we didn't start thinking about anything until we ordered our class rings, man. I mean, that was the truth of it. And there's so much out there. I want once you get these kids connected and moving forward, it helps them to research things they like. And as a great question too, for tips for parents out there, I'd say let your kiddos get engaged and something that they want to be engaged with, especially if it's healthy. And of course, anything in moderation, you can kind of somewhat keep things healthy. I mean, too much gaming, obviously there's issues with that, but not only that, letting them do that, but taking that time, and it's tough. I'm talking to myself here, speaking to myself, taking that time to go and enter into their world, listen to how they want to describe it, have an understanding from their perspective. It's done wonders. My wife is often, I've stated before, she sets the tone, and my job's to maintain that tone. And she's, this last week, hey, we're pretty much a sports family. We do a lot of sporting things, but my kids are becoming more versatile because they are in that gaming world. I've got one that does the hunting. I got, and the little one, he's just watching the big brothers. And if I can come in and support anything that's healthy, good community, good group, good small groups like what we do in church, I think that's key to anything. And I hope that the Cherokee Nation can help with any step along that way. But I'm proud of what Chief and his administration's been able to accomplish, along with the council, and really along with every single individual employee at the Cherokee Nation. They're the ones that deserve the accolades. They're the ones that grind day in and day out for their communities. They're the ones that bring these questions to myself and to Chief and these educators. And so that communication is very key in what we do.
Deputy Chief, is there anything more you'd like to add before we end our virtual roundtable today?
Well, I would say, I believe the next few years is going to be critical, and helping to find that roadmap to close that digital divide, to shorten those gaps. There's a lot of funding we feel like it's going to be coming down, and I think it's going to be key. And just in life, in your own relationship with, your most important relationship for me is with Jesus, and you take that template, and how can I put that type of thinking into my relationships with individuals within the community, with the schools, with everything, because we're going to run into some differences, but I often call that difference that iron sharpening iron. We come out better as one man sharpens another. We're looking at internet access today, this digital divide, but we've covered a few other things. Those things are going to be important, but we can't forget that there's still spots on this reservation. When I drive through Kenwood, I have 0 cell service. When I drive home and go on Blue Top Road and go through the refuge, I've got spots, and I have 2 phones, one Verizon, one AT&T, where I don't get connection. So there's some cellular activities there that I think that we need to look forward to. But one last thing, Tyler, and I think it's important, it's an informational piece here of some opportunity that's out there for Cherokee Nation citizens that may qualify, and that is the Federal Lifeline Program, which is available for low-income housing, which provides a $34 subsidy on broadband costs, okay? Also, the government is launching an emergency broadband benefit program that will make an additional $75 a month subsidy for low-income households on tribal lands, okay? So stay connected on and be watching on connect.cherokee.org for more information about this program and any other things. If you want to know where's the closest drive-up site, you can go on there to that connect.cherokee.org and find those spots. And Tyler, once again, Matthew Brunk, Stilwell Schools, as always, has a place in my heart. My family's from Stilwell, so thank you for the job that you do down there. You've got a lot of good workers. And Tyler Thomas, you've always been a gentleman. The Cherokee Phoenix does a great job, and your staff. I just want to tell you, sir, I know you're not always with them, but when they're out there, they are very professional. They conduct themselves in the best way, and they put out a good product. So, well done to both of you for all you do.
Mr. Brunk, anything before we conclude?
I just want to tell you, both of you, thank you for this opportunity for me to be able to talk about Stilwell. Like, I love this community. I'm from this community. I love our students, and education is just so important to me, not only for my students, but all of our students in our community. And so to get to work with Cherokee Nation, to get to work with awesome teachers in all of our local schools, it's just a privilege. And anytime I get to talk about some of the great things that are going on in our community, it's just, it's just a great opportunity for me. So I just appreciate it. And thank you so much, Tyler. And thank you so much, Deputy Chief Warner. I appreciate you. So,
Deputy, Mr. Brunk, thank you for joining me today in discussing the digital divide in Indian country and how the tribe and its community partners are working to mitigate it. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram to catch our next episode. God bless. What up?